the last 1 year, we've also seen the hubs playing a major role. Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, to some extent, Chennai, Bangalore. They've kind of evolved to become hubs in a major way. We see them playing bigger role in the next 1 year to come.
Let's look a little bit in the future. I don't think any business starts off by just looking at all the bad times that are going to come, because coming around the corner is definitely improvement. The supply chain, it's an improvement in the Make in India program. It's an improvement in manufacturing.
I believe in wide-body freighters, but I also believe in the combination of having wide-body freighters and wide-body aircraft as well. And I think, Ramesh, you're in a sweet spot here of your delivery, right? I think people need to remember that 5 777 passenger aircraft with full passenger loads equivalent of a 747 freighter.
It's absolutely important that, especially for time and temperature sensitive cargo, the airports are able to build the capacity which is required. And glad to tell that most of the airports in India are heavily focused on creating this capacity. So I have 3 airline partners out here on the stage with me who want to give you the confidence that Indian airports are definitely focused on building capacity, and we should hopefully soon be part of your Mercedes Rolls-Royce analogy as we go forward.
Good afternoon once again, and it's great to have a very distinguished panel of speakers, experts in their own fields, and thank you once again for joining back after the lunch session. I know it's a difficult one, but I have 2 tasks on your behalf which I'm going to give the panelists. So one is we have to keep them awake, and second is when we finish a session, they should go thinking they have some solutions in hand, new ideas. We're not talking problems, we're talking solutions. So I think these are 2 things that hopefully we will achieve out of this session. Just to put the context, we're talking of air, which is obviously a small part of the larger logistics piece. If you look at it, the government has a lot of focus on logistics industry per se. It's almost a $300 billion industry, growing to about $400 billion by 25-26. Very high focus because about almost 1.2 million new jobs to be created. But 60% of that logistics spend, that number that talked about, 60% is on transport, and if you further break it down, 60% of that is into trucking, and then about 30% we're talking of rail, and then another 8% coastal and all that. So only 1% is actually air, which is happening. So it's a very small number, but for many of us standing here and sitting over there, it's the bread and butter. So it's a big focus area. How do we improve things over there so that we continue to stay relevant, continue to make an impact, continue to commercially exploit the opportunities available? The government has taken several steps for growth. Morning we had industry government representatives who were talking about the things that they are doing. Obviously there are very high impact policies which the government has brought. There is the national logistics policy, much talked about, which we've heard. Basically the idea over there is to allow free flow of commodities, and raise the competitiveness of the Indian logistics sector. And the interesting thing is that, what even our GS from the morning was saying, that they have been given targets to achieve. So all of these policies are not just policies. It's not a piece of paper. Actually, they have, for instance, on the national logistics policy, there are 3 very, very clear deliverables which the government has taken on themselves, which they will actually, along with the industry, deliver. So they're talking of reducing logistics costs comparable to global benchmarks, We'll not debate on what the number is. There's a lot of debate going on whether it's 14 or 8 or somewhere in between. So we'll kind of leave that aside. But the broader subject is, reduce the cost of logistics. The second target that they've taken is, improve the logistics performance and to be in the top 25 by 2030. We've done some, we kind of woke up last week, a little before that, so some good news that India has jumped 16 places in the last decade to about 38th rank from 54. Good improvement, but still a long way to go. And then there's a third target which they've taken for themselves, is creating a data-driven decision making. So I think these things will drive. Also, one of the policies is infrastructure status to logistics. Then GST, of course, which has done a lot of good, which has helped, fewer, larger warehouses, consolidation of warehouses. 80% of the warehousing still in the country is in the unorganized sector. So I think there's a lot of headroom for growth over there and things getting better. FDI, of course, has been allowed in many sectors, which is now helping creation of investment-grade assets you would see in handling warehouses, terminals, things like that. Also, there is a PLI, and which is helping, giving companies incentives on incremental sales and things like that. So there is a lot of backdrop of, what the government has done in terms of their commitment to policies. There is also some high-impact initiatives, things like 35 multimodal parks across the country which have been planned. There's Make in India, of course, which is happening. There is digitalization of logistics. There's also infrastructure initiatives. So against that backdrop, when we kind of zero in on air cargo per se, and I think that's what our audience would like to understand. But before I really get into the questions where we kind of start picking your brains a little bit, I would just, ask a question which is like a common question, and I'll come one by one. I'll just go in the sequence that it is. So Ramesh, we'll go first with you, and then, we'll go in the sequence. But the question is, if you look at the last 1 year that has gone by, what is it that would be the most satisfying achievement that you said, something which really makes you proud as a business? And linked to that, as you kind of crystal ball and gaze into the future, 12 months into the future, what is something that is really concerning or something which you think needs more of your attention? So 2 questions which I think we will like to understand from each of the experts. What has been the most satisfying achievement over the last 12 months, and what is it that's something that really needs their attention over the next 12 months?
Thank you, Sanjeev. I think it's a very interesting question. Good afternoon, all of you. It's very exciting to be here. It's a very, very large get-together of the trade colleagues. It's a fantastic opportunity to meet all of you and also share some thoughts here. On the questions that Sanjeev asked, I think I'll not only 12 months, but possibly I'll take the clock backwards by another 12 months. So as an industry, we learned a lot during the COVID period. COVID kind of taught the aviation industry that cargo can also be a bread earner and supporter of the aviation industry. Now, that kind of continued in 2022 as well. So we have seen airlines, terminal operators, airports, seeing the growth continuing in year 22 that happened. And very importantly, some of the efficiencies that we all experienced during the COVID period. So I'm very happy to note that from the airport operations point of view, airlines and the terminal operators, they kind of continued the service levels so that we kind of gained and learned in the COVID period across all the airports in India. So that's a very good thing that I have noticed. Number one. Number two, there are some segments that have kind of suffered, but there are many segments that have continued to grow. Domestic cargo is an example. Within international, some commodities have continued to grow. So this is very positive to note. But very, very importantly, the growth that we have seen in 22, ahead in the sense next 1 year, we actually see much bigger opportunities. We see technology playing a bigger role. We see especially the domestic carriers playing a bigger role in terms of managing the ex-India exports, so on and so forth. We also see the local freighter operators starting their operations, helping the industry to grow and also feed into the major hubs in India. So in the last 1 year, we've also seen the hubs playing a major role, Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, to some extent, Chennai, Bangalore. They've kind of evolved to become hubs in a major way. We see them playing bigger role in the next 1 year to come. But from the airline point of view, not only next 1 year, possibly a couple of years ahead, I'm seeing very, very bright future. Not only growth in terms of the volumes, but we see a lot of manufacturing for exports happening in the country. We see a lot of traction that is happening. There is a lot of interest in terms of improving and growing exports in the country. but I also see a lot of trade partners adopting technology to gain the efficiency, to reduce cost, and pass on that cost benefit to the customers. So that is exciting to me from my point of view.
Thank you so much. And we'll come back with some of the points that you made, but Vipul, over to you.
Thanks, Sanjeev. Good afternoon, everyone. And this one's an easy question. From my perspective, it was nearly about a year ago that I joined Pradhan Air Express. So for me, the success story is that this company, which took on a task which was, today I would consider it very, very challenging, of not only being a startup cargo airline in India, but also introducing a brand new equipment type into the country. So it's the entire effort that I've seen over the last 1 year that Pradhan Air Express and its team has done, and of course with massive support from all the regulatory agencies, from MOCA and from the airports and the handlers, who've supported Pradhan Air Express. That particular success, that the aircraft is still there, we are flying on a regular basis, and we've grown month on month in the backdrop of very, very tough and challenging times. And to just quote some specifics in terms of the sort of challenges that we've faced, which have become which we've worked around and which we've got solutions to. It was about finding a team. It was finding a team that believed in the fact that we could start a cargo airline in this country. It was about finding a team that would take the vision forward. It was about tackling the challenges of the business environment that we had. And all of that put together, for us, it makes, it's not just a personal success, it's about the Pradhan Air Express team. And of course, we've got our founders and directors in the audience, and of course, the gentleman who flew the first flight back into India, Captain Khari, he's there in the audience as well. If I were to ask him to stand up and take a bow, then he'll probably get a lot of marriage proposals, so I'm not doing that. But so we are not only professional, we are very handsome as well, as you would look at Mr. Khari and talk about that. So just going forward from our perspective, you spoke about the challenges that we see. Of course, the biggest challenge, and for my colleagues from the airlines here and the other places, is the economic environment and what's being projected across the board. But I think in all points of time, at all points of time, people do tend to forget. And thanks, Glenn, for actually putting a lot of perspective to it in the morning session in your keynote address about what's coming around the corner. It might seem that we've had a fair amount of challenges in terms of how the business cycles have been. It might seem that there has been, fears of recession. There have been other talks of, how inventories are piling up, or your sales, your supply chains are under pressure. Let's look a little bit in the future. I don't think any business starts off by just looking at all the bad times that are going to come, because coming around the corner is definitely an improvement in the supply chain. It's an improvement in the Make in India program. It's an improvement in manufacturing. All of that is coming up. What we kind of need to do, and just to finish up, is to duck when the going is tough, and then see how we are positioned for taking advantage of what's coming around the corner. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Vipul. And Mark, over to you.
Great, Sanjeev. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here on the platform. I think, Sanjeev, if I'm looking at achievements at Indigo, and I've only been Indigo for about just over 2 months, so do forgive me if I'm not that fluent on the airline itself. But like Ramesh, I think COVID, as difficult as it was for our industry, gave a lot of people an understanding how important it was in so many facets of our lives, okay? Both as consumers and as shippers and everything, and people rely on cargo. Indigo, I think, during the COVID period, operated over 5,000 flights just with cargo on the seats, which I think is a huge achievement to the team there. But I think what's the really biggest achievement, for us in the last year, very much like you, Vipin, is the fact that we've taken delivery of a couple of freighters now, and we have another one coming later in the year. And why do I think that's an achievement? Because I think the leadership of the organization have now realized the importance of air cargo. I come from a background of an airline, very big Asian airline, probably the biggest freighter operator in India at the moment. And when they make decisions about planning, cargo is at the table. It's not outside, it's not an afterthought, it's at the table. That's never been the case in the low-cost carriers. If you take a Ryanair or an EasyJet in Europe, EasyJet and Ryanair, between them, the two biggest airlines probably in Europe, cargo doesn't feature. But somehow in this country, we've managed to change that. And, Indigo is like the Ryanair of Europe, except a hell of a lot better. For us to cross that line, to understand the importance of where India's going in terms of what it requires for people to ship and import goods, I think is a huge step. So I think that's great for Indigo, and the people before me who made that decision were very, very wise, I think. We've just got to make it work now. In terms of looking forward, Vipin, I agree with you. I think the economic environment at the moment is probably the biggest challenge. Having said that, we've all been around long enough to know we live in a cyclical world. I think COVID has changed the cycle slightly. We don't know how long they're going to be. The other thing we've all learned is that these assets are long-term. Freighters are not for Christmas. They're for life if you've bought them, or they're for the period of the lease if you've leased them. And so really, we will have to sort of weather, I think, a lot of storms. And we'll also have to learn a little bit here in India how to really use freighters and to make sure they're utilized properly. There's a big imbalance between import and export, depending on whether you're in the east or you're going to the west. And for freighters to work, you need to have that reverse load. So there's a lot of work to go, I think, for us to understand how we're going to intelligently deploy these aircraft to make sure that they bring the value to us as the airline, but also to the customers.
Thank you, Mark. You made some very interesting comments, actually, and I think that the point that you made about, the leadership kind of recognized the importance of cargo, and, I keep telling my industry colleagues, the COVID for in ways was the Cinderella moment for cargo business, We know the Cinderella story, the most beautiful one, but somewhere kept at the back. Until one fine day, the luck dawned and, she became the princess. And this is what happened to what COVID did to cargo, actually, where cargo was always, if you look at if I look at my airline background, it was always, at the back. Nobody's, talking. You just make the money and they count the bucks, but nobody's talking cargo in the company. If you come to the airports, there's no different story. And, but not any longer. So that has changed. That has changed. And people realize that not only did they make sure, that the companies, some of them it was, actually survival. The cargo business kept the companies afloat. That is how critical it was and so that really changed things. And I think that focus will continue to stay. And you said that, freighters are not for Christmas. And I think in India, we're fortunate to have many festivals. We can keep them going around the year. So we can keep them busy for some reason or the other. So I'll come to you on that on a question. But before that, Arun, over to you.
Thank you, Sanjeev, and good afternoon, everybody. First of all, my compliments to ACFI for organizing a fantastic event. I think the insights which have been shared so far have been extremely useful, at least for me personally, so really, really happy to be here. Thank you so much. So last year was a very unique year, as we all know, and we realized that there was a plethora of headwinds which the industry faced and which was impacting our business, be it the Ukraine war or the Chinese lockdown, the slowdown in the economic activities in the West, et cetera, et cetera. So in this context, globally, we were seeing that the air cargo industry was witnessing a slowdown. There were many regions of the world which continued to remain below pre-pandemic level. In India, however, we saw that we were able to achieve over 3 million tons of annual throughput, which was the same level as the previous year. We saw a very healthy 10% growth on the domestic front, primarily driven by express and e-commerce. And of course, we also saw many new Indian freighter airlines commencing operations last year as well. If I may talk specifically about Bangalore Airport, we saw that we were able to maintain our share of 13% air cargo across all Indian airports. We continue to remain number one in perishable handlings, handling almost about 28% of India's perishable volumes. And in the midst of all this, at Bangalore, we were also able to launch our cargo brand, BLR Cargo, making us the first airport in the country to have a dedicated brand ID for cargo business. So overall, in my opinion, I think the best achievement of last year was the confidence we got that cargo has stood on its strength, has held on strongly, and has shown enough agility and robustness to be able to meet the market needs. Now looking forward for the next 12 months, the forecast for the Indian economic growth trajectory remains very bullish, and that bodes well for the air cargo business as well. At the same time, many of the challenges, or at least some of the challenges of the last year, would continue to remain with us for some time in the future as well, be it the macroeconomic aspects or be it the geopolitical factors as well. At Bangalore, we are focusing a lot over the next 12 months in trying to ensure that we develop adequate midterm capacity and cargo handling efficiencies. We are currently expanding our cold chain facilities and also expanding our cargo terminals. We are developing a brand new domestic cargo terminal and a grade A logistics park. And we are at the moment underway a transition to our new cargo terminal operators for the new term as well. So I think overall, we want to be sure that we are ready with the capacity, with the infrastructure, with the processes in place, which will be befitting the growth which we are forecasting for the cargo industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun. I think, and you made a very important part that, what the airports are doing in terms of creating capacity, infrastructure, and some great work done over there as well. And if I look at it from an India perspective, there's lots happening in the country. So even the GMR group of airports, Delhi, Hyderabad, adding capacity, similarly for other airports in the country as well. So, I mean, there is one side on the airport capacity infrastructure is getting a lot of focus. But, we're talking of international cargo opportunities, so people just coming to you, I mean, if we look at, of course, the airline capacity needs to complement, the capacity that is being created on the ground by the airports and the work that is being done. So, but if you look at Indian carriers, roughly, if I remember, there are about 14 dedicated freighters in the country, which is there. And against that backdrop, 90-95% of international cargo still, going through international carriers operating from here. With the current scenario, I think if India really needs to grow, there has to be a focus on, whereas, the Airbus report says that by 2050, there will be about 40 freighters in the country. I hope it's more. But, now having started that airline and, and having, I see that you have that risk-taking ability going with, with a brand new aircraft, brand new concept and trying to do so. Tell us from your perspective, what are the opportunities for Indian freighter operators, to induct capacity into the Indian market, both to service international, I mean more so, but even for domestic. So how do you see that?
Thanks, Sanjeev, for that. And actually, a part of that answer is in your statement itself. 95% of the cargo that's carried out of India is on international airlines. I think the number might be slightly different there, but it's, a majority of the cargo carried out of India is on international airlines. Which begets the question that those airlines found India as an opportunity, brought in 1, 2, 3, multiple freighters. They want access to different airports. They want access to multiple airports at the same time. They want a free, sort of a free regime in terms of permissions. They want to fly at will. Why not an Indian carrier? And as I said, we've at Pradhan, we've actually put our money where our mouth is. Before I can talk to you about it, we as an airline, we brought in a freighter, and as an airline, we are operating it. Today, we are operating, less than one flight a day. But, let's also understand that we have been operating for just a little over 7 months. We are a standalone operator. And in that respect, we have built at least one set of routes which at the moment is serving our customers. But if I look forward, those routes need to be expanded because there are more customers who want us to work with them. And without saying too much, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we might be able to talk a little bit more about what our sort of specific expansion plans are. And again, we try and first put the routes in place and then make the announcements about what we need to do. If I look at the traditional flow of cargo, China was always big, and I think China will remain big even though a lot of people talk about business moving out of China. Of course, yes, but if you take 20% out of 100,000 tons or 300,000 tons from one airport, it's, it'll be great for another small airport to get that 20%. But that particular airport will still remain pretty relevant. If you very carefully look at China, what's happened is that they used to have these 4 or 5 large airports. Now those 4 or 5 large airports have actually moved, they've become slightly bigger, but you've also got this, the emerging airports. So now there are about 10 airports in China which are doing a lot of business and again, a lot of them to the Indian subcontinent. So we certainly would like to play in that, in that space, and it's no secret, even if I say it here, there's no secret, everyone knows that, that's the lane that, is more suitable to our kind of aircraft, Indigo's kind of aircraft that we've got. So those are the areas that we look as opportunities, but again, we've also got intentions to grow our fleet. And that growth is based on the fact that there are other markets in and around which will work with transshipment traffic coming in via the country. Apart from the fact that I think we are probably the only airline which is looking at getting wide-body freighters, and that's been a question from a number of people. We are bullish about the cargo business. We are bullish about brand India. And we have, an intention to get wide-body freighters in 2025. So, as I said again, our intention is that we expect it to grow. And certainly if an international carrier feels the pinch because there is a homegrown Indian carrier now stepping into space, so be it. They probably need to find another place.
Okay, interesting. So I think these wide-body freighters would be okay, I think I'll let you applaud more generously. So.
Thank you.
But picking on from there, so wide-body freighters is, maybe it would be music to the ears to many of us, looking at that. So all the best for that. But now putting it in a different perspective, Mark, coming to you, I mean, what you're trying to do is you're trying to put narrow-body freighters as part of a sub-fleet of a, narrow-body, larger fleet. So how do you see, where do you see positioning yourself?
Yeah, you're right. So we operate, about 300 narrow-body Airbus 320, 321 now, with many to come. And we've put in these 2 narrow-body freighters, which by default, compared to where I used to be in life of palletized cargo to palletized cargo, is not that easy. Having said that, we're talking tonnages on the aircraft that Pradhan and I operate between 20 to 25 tons. So in terms of breakdown and build-up, of which India is very good at, we're having a fair bit of success. In terms of operating 2 converted freighters as a sub-fleet of, a wider passenger fleet, well, obviously, that comes with certain benefits, right? Whether it's engineering support or ground ops or crewing and stuff like that. So in that sense, I think I'm very lucky to have the support of a very large organization in terms of its flight operations ability. But I just want to come back to the point of wide-body freighters. Absolutely, I believe in wide-body freighters, but I also believe in the combination of having wide-body freighters and wide-body aircraft as well. And I think, Ramesh, you're in a sweet spot here of your delivery, right? I think people need to remember that, 5 777 passenger aircraft with full passenger loads the equivalent of a 747 freighter. So if you've got high-frequency routes like you may have to Europe or to other parts of Asia, essentially you're operating in a very efficient way in the belly. But, if you can have that combination of Pradhan feeding maybe Air India, why not? It would make a lot of sense. And I think that's another thing, by the way. I think all of us in this business up here of aviation and airlines realize that there needs to be in the industry a lot of partnership. And I'm not talking the partnerships that would cause any kind of legal issues, right? We all know what happened maybe in the past, but I think airlines need to work together in interlining opportunities for a number of reasons. One, we need to get rid of wastage, right? Wastage can do a lot of damage economically, but can do a lot of damage environmentally. So let's get rid of wastage. So I think there's an opportunity. And coming back to your point again about the imbalance of, I guess, domestic homegrown carriers and international, that's a great opportunity. And the market is big enough for everyone to have a piece of that pie, I think. And we'll certainly, in terms of me, try and do that going forward.
Good. Thank you for that. And I saw Vipul shaking hands, and and Ramesh, you also kind of reached out to shake hands. So I'll ask the next question is for you.
I was standing here, he reached out to me. So anyway, I was very happy to shake hands with you.
Okay, but anyways, so coming to... Yeah. So I have sideways, I didn't get the view. Maybe I need a replay, like the IPL. Show me how close did they get, So, okay. But coming back to, so Ramesh, I mean, you've seen two different passenger airline operating narrow bodies, focusing on freighters as well. There's been a lot of talk. We've been hearing and kind of reading what Air India is saying about their focus on cargo. A significant part of the revenues will come from the cargo side of the business. So any thoughts that you can share, and what is your plans? How do you want to address the cargo capacity? Because there's a lot of talk of the planes getting ordered, but obviously this fraternity, at least I can speak for here, is sitting trying to understand what kind of cargo capacity are you going to provide for them?
So at this stage, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of details to share with you because everybody knows about the fleet induction program that's in the press. So we are expecting a lot of wide-body aircraft being inducted into our operation. So I need to broadly repeat what Mark has already talked about. This is a big opportunity. Air India as an organization is aware of it. And all the 4 airlines that are coming together also take cargo business very seriously. So we see a big opportunity in terms of cargo contributing to the overall revenue. So currently it is running at about 6-7% of the overall revenue, but we see that growing up to 15-16% in about let's say 4 or 5 years time. So it's very important for the group. It is very important for the board and the management team. Having said that, our freighter expansion, our freighter induction programs are currently under evaluation. We are evaluating different options. So at this stage, there is nothing that I can actually share with you, but I can only share with you that there is definite intention to look at it. And at some point in time, maybe a couple of years down the line, you'll see Air India also inducting the freighter capacity into the fleet and into its capacity. But at this stage, one opportunity that we see, we are a wide-body operation. We operate multiple hubs in India. In these hubs, we see some capacity imbalances, as all of you know. So one way of actually filling that capacity imbalance is actually to look at operating the freighter operations through some partners. So this option is being evaluated. So obviously, we are in touch with the potential freighter operators, present freighter operators in the country. We're looking at filling the capacity imbalance with the help of these operators. So that is something that is definitely on the table. We are discussing with them. Something we may possibly do that in about 3-4 months' time. Going forward, having our own freighters is something that I can only talk maybe a year later, roughly.
Thank you for that. But the number that you talked about reminded me. So you're saying about 6 to 7% contribution may become almost double or a little more than that. And that reminds me of an ACFI mantra actually. When we started off, we said let's work together to make the pie bigger. If you make the pie bigger, everybody wins. So I think that's what I can take away from it. So there's lots to look forward to. Thank you for that. Mark, I just want to come back to you. I know you have a very specific kind of focus on international cargo, so to say. And if we look at, India's air cargo traffic volumes kind of stayed flat in FY23, from a previous fiscal of 3.1, which was almost there. 90% of recovery from the pre-COVID levels, which was about 3.6 million, what we did in FY19. But international cargo is accounting for 59% of those volumes, and the recovery was slower on the other part. So what are the opportunities within India which you see, for developing international air cargo?
Right. I've got a bit of a theory around international air cargo and growing it, and it's a 3-part pillar theory, which says you need 3 attributes. You need to have a market, both an import and export market. So when I say market, I mean manufacturing. I mean a growing ability for people to spend and import whatever goods they may be. So you need to have a market, which India certainly has. And you look at India's GDP figures and the numbers that Glyn was giving us this morning, it's a very much growing market. So you have a very strong facet there. The second pillar is infrastructure. You need to have the right infrastructure. And, conversations I have with you, Sanjay, with Bangalore as well, is that, we're really getting there, right? A lot of it's in progress,
yes,
but the vision is big. You heard it this morning with regards to the government getting behind it. Infrastructure is absolutely key. And if you take, again, going back to my old days, if you look at Hong Kong Airport in terms of infrastructure, for cargo, it's the Mercedes, it's the Rolls Royce, it's beautiful, and it's so easy for people to operate there, and people like to use it as a hub. So we've got the market, definitely here. The infrastructure, I think, is getting to a point where it's much, much better, and will do over the next years. And then the third point is us. It's the executioner. You need someone who needs to invest in the ability to operate aircraft, and to have the faith in their economic model to make them work. And I think you'll see a massive change in the coming, probably, it's not going to happen overnight, but in 3 to 5 years, as we mature as domestic Indian cargo players going international, whether it's wide-body freighters, whether it's wide-body passenger, whether it's what we're doing, like Meridien, you've got the executioners. So you've got the market, without a doubt. You've got the infrastructure getting better and better by the year, and you've got the executioners. So I'm very bullish about it. I really am very bullish about it. And you add on top of that everything you read in the newspaper. I'm no expert on it, but you alluded to it, the movement from manufacturing from China to places like India, and the government's resolve to make in India work. I can't see how if it goes wrong, we are only ourselves to blame, I believe, here. We've got to make it work, and we can make it work, and we've got the roadmap for it.
Good. No, thank you for that. I think you've simplified the mantra in 3 points, so I think which is great. You made one very important point about, infrastructure and, Hong Kong like being the Mercedes. And I think kind of agree to that, because what they've done, I was talking to the Hong Kong team about last week, and the Sea Air product. In fact, they've got a multimodal product where they're, taking cargo in China, bringing it on a ship into the Hong Kong airport, and it flies out. And it's a very seamless kind of a transition. So I think that's an example of where an airport has gone and actually created a product, so to say. So, Arun, my next question is to you, actually. What role do you think airports can play in catalyzing the growth of international cargo?
So we've already seen that the logistics and supply chain industry in the last few years has already proven its mettle in terms of showing resilience and robustness in meeting the market needs. And for sure, airports do play a very, very catalytic role in trying to ensure that this growth is sustained. There are 2 or 3 focus points which I would want to probably dwell upon, where the airports absolutely are critical as we move forward. One is creating the right kind of infrastructure and capacity building. It's absolutely important that, especially for time and temperature sensitive cargo, the airports are able to build the capacity which is required. And glad to tell that most of the airports in India are heavily focused on creating this capacity. So I have 3 airline partners out here on the stage with me who want to give you the confidence that Indian airports are definitely focused on building capacity, and we should hopefully soon be part of your Mercedes Rolls-Royce analogy as we go forward. Still some distance to go, but we are getting there as well. The second point would be, of course, trying to embrace innovation and technology. I think that's a very key part as we move forward towards having transparency and efficiency. And I think enough was spoken in the previous panel discussion how technology can really highlight the efficiencies of this industry, be it blockchains, IoT, AI, even higher adoption of e-airway bills as well. In fact, we've already seen that with automation, how the cargo growth has fast-tracked, created an era of e-commerce, which is a key driving force for air cargo growth as well. And thirdly, I think all this growth we're talking about has to come with responsibility, with sustainability at its core. We have to ensure that we take initiatives as an industry and as airport operators to be able to reduce emissions of all kinds, be it noise, CO2, waste generation, and be in line with the international standards and practices as well. India recently surpassed China in terms of population. In terms of air cargo, we are still 1/5 of the size of China. We are confident that with the government of India's push on manufacturing and also with our common vision of 10 million by 2030, airports will continue to play a very catalytic role as we go forward.
Thank you so much, Arun. So I think, you talked about the hardcore infrastructure part of it, but we all know, cargo is also about, the efficiency of information, how fast the information can flow. And the government also realizing that in the National Logistics Policy, they've said, one of the focus areas is one of the targets, in fact, they've taken for themselves is, creating data-driven decision mechanism. And, you've got a unified logistics platform which talks about this. They're even talking about how the states are integrating information. So, Ramesh, coming to you, now we've talked about the hard side of the solutions, the infrastructure, but tell us, where do you see the role of technology in what you're doing, predictive analysis, AI? Is there room for that which you think can drive efficiencies?
In fact, let me start with the basics. I think to have a basic system that actually integrates seamlessly with the airports, with the stakeholders, that is a challenge even today. Despite the fact that many airports have advanced, we talked about Hector, many other airports actually have advanced and they've gone ahead. So some of the airports in India are maybe 20, 25 years behind the technology. To me, I think we need to start with that basic to ensure that everybody that is playing a role in the industry has a system and they are seamlessly integrated. I know some airports have done it in the form of cargo community system. Many airports have not done it. Even those airports that have the cargo community system, they have not been able to completely integrate all the stakeholders. So there are some basics that we need to fix for sure. I think to me that is actually phase one. We are still kind of discovering. One of my favorite topics, which is also Cyrus, is about paperless operation. We've been talking for almost a decade and a half. We are still not there yet. I think we need to work hard to achieve that, all the players in the industry. I think going forward from the point of view of running the business, and I've heard the other members saying that in the earlier panel as well. So the use of AI, blockchain, predictive analytics, they obviously play a lot of role internally from the airline point of view, especially from the analytics point of view, in terms of estimating the demand, managing the pricing related changes, making sure that we are actually in line with the market expectations, managing our revenue more intelligently. We are actually seeing a lot of benefit in terms of using technology to manage these processes effectively, intelligently, and smartly. And I think those we are kind of discovering at this stage. But to me, we start with the basics. I think at the airport level, at the airline level, we need to fix the basics of the technology, and maybe gradually over the next 1 or 2 years' time, start adopting some of these emerging technologies to gain the efficiencies, which will eventually be passed on to the trade customers anyway. I think that's how I see.
Thank you. I'll just, while we stay on that, I think there's an important topic which has been going on since morning, and I think we need to address it. And I think, would play an international important part in that. This is on transshipment. We have got a commitment of 10 million tons that we want to achieve as an industry, which we are telling, the minister, that we've given an oath, we will, and we've sworn that we will do it. And all of us are striving towards doing that. But, we know all of it will not come from O&D cargo. A transshipment cargo has to support it. But as we try to, walk that road, we see challenges, we see roadblocks. What is it that you see are the challenges, and what is it that in terms of solutions that we need to, recommend to the government?
From the Air India point of view, we are India-based airline. We use major airports in India, Delhi, Mumbai being, and also Bangalore. These are our major hubs in the country. And over the last couple of years, we have seen many of our customers, agents, and also the GSAs that we use globally, they would like to use these airports for transshipment. So they are more than happy to actually generate long-haul cargo, which should be handled and managed efficiently in our airports. Unfortunately, given the policy framework, there are some hurdles. We are not able to really compete with very efficient hubs that are around the country, such as Dubai, Doha, Singapore, Hong Kong. We are not really able to compete with them. So, for example, some of these hubs manage their transshipments within 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours. So these are actually they productized the hubs, and they actually sell it on that basis. Now, if you look at some of the transshipment hub operations that we operate in India, we are actually not able to connect even within 12 hours time. Sometimes it takes 24 hours time, not related to the schedules, in terms of the processes and the time that it actually requires to process cargo at the hubs itself. No, we need to definitely become efficient. So I think we've talked about it in the past as well. Policy changes are required. We've had many workshops, many interactions with the ministry and other stakeholders, the government stakeholders in the country. One big change that has to happen is related to the security regime. Now, we've tried with the D2D. To some extent, it was successful. But then there was a lot of feedback that was given to the ministry to change even the D2D policy that came out, which is still under evaluation. But when it comes to I2I, which is very important for us, which is where we're actually expecting a lot of shipments passing through the hubs and generating that cargo that would lead to 10 million tons eventually for the country, where unfortunately nothing has happened. So I think there is a serious policy change that's required related to security-related regulations. Number one. Number two, we have also talked about customs making a change to be more efficient in line with international practices. These two changes have to happen very quickly for people like us to be more successful, bring more cargo to our airports, and generate that extra cargo through our airports.
Thank you. And I think what was encouraging, I was just talking at the end of the inaugural session with one of the government representatives, and they said, we are big time working on multimodal. So in fact, when the government bought in Gati Shakti, they wanted the different modes to integrate, and I think there's some opportunity there. Little futuristic, optimistic, but even why not transshipment between different modes? I mean, the first hurdle is, of course, air to air, but then I think we should look beyond that as well. And as ACFI, I think we'll take back some actions from there. I have many other questions, but I think I'll limit myself because we still need to give an opportunity to the audience to kind of grill you guys. You're the experts, you know everything. And but one more question, Vipul, for you before we get to the audience. Okay. So, in an interconnected world, we are looking at supply chains are becoming increasingly complex. There is also, pressures from other modes of transport. So tell us, are there ideas on what can air cargo do to win back traffic from other modes?
The good thing again is that most of the questions you're asking me, they were already answered in the morning. And I go back to straight away. I go back to Glyn, and Glyn put up. I think his last 3 slides were about mode change, where he put up some things that were going by road and by truck and by. They were going on the ship, and they were able to add more value to it. So I think there is definitely a possibility, and I'll recount to you something that has come to us over the last 2 to 3 months. There have been more than 5 different people who have come across to us and spoken about the fact that we've got this opportunity for perishable cargo to come from here. We can take your entire freighter. What can you do with it? And those are points where freighters have not gone. Those are points where freighters have not operated, and those are points where if I look at the actual tonnages from those airports, you're talking about 45 tons a month. And they are talking about taking a freighter thrice a week. And so when you go down and you start to speak to them about what is it that's giving you the confidence of being able to do this, it's very simple. There was no one to speak with. We didn't have a choice of going out to someone who could say, yes, I can just put on a flight for you to there. So when they look at Pradhan Air Express and they say, right, these guys are non-scheduled operators, they can offer us charters. I'm not saying that the other guys can't, but it's that perception. So when they come across to you and they speak to you about it, you realize that we always wait for the traffic to build up before we put a flight. There are going to be opportunities as we create awareness amongst our team, amongst the exporters, amongst the airports, that here is your opportunity to actually work within that range. And Mark put it very well that we work within that 21 to 25 ton range, and that range is something that is suitable for the smaller airports as well. So that's what gives us the confidence of going out and speaking to more people. The one thing that we would want, of course, is that it's to do with the equipment that is required for this aircraft to be properly utilized. So that those are things that we are addressing. And prior to my coming from a passenger-based airline to this place, I used to be of the opinion that you got to have all the facility at the airport for you to be able to operate. That's not true. There are lots of people who you can work with who can actually make that facility available to you with a short period. They can be temporary solutions found just depending on what the opportunities are. So that's what gives us a lot of confidence.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of latent demand. As we also speak to customers, there's a lot of latent demand which is waiting to be converted if they get the right kind of solution. So yeah, I think I will open it up for questions now from the audience. If you have a question, we have limited time. We'll take a few questions. You can be brief. You are okay to compliment any of the speakers you want, on what they've said. But keep your questions brief. We'll just very quickly go around. If any of you has questions.
It is not a specific question, but we all talked. We know infrastructure has improved. We know processes have improved in the past. But ultimately, our goal of 10 million tons, I have not seen any roadmap. I mean, how can we reach there? We talked about hub development, which is many airports across the world are relying on hub development. Sea to air is one you are shifting. By having more airlines will not only help, it will take the share of another partner. But how can we reach 3.5 million? It is quite painful for me. I am also in the industry for 40 years. We have not seen 3.5 million put together international and domestic cargo increasing from India in last 7-8 years. So definitely it was not never. So I think we need to focus on untapped export market, which I think one of you already mentioned, agriculture product, perishable. I mean, there's a lot of potential. I personally feel, I'm not the expert, but we really need to have some roadmap. Otherwise we will talk. I mean, by having a better infrastructure, better IT, it will not take us from 3.5 million to 10 million or 5 million. So this is a very open question, actually. It is not a question, in fact, but I'm very keen to know from any one of you what could be the real factor which can really take us to 10 million tons.
I think, I know this is very interesting. We've been kind of debating also in many forums. And I think in the past we said that Such a growth cannot happen without having an anchor airline, right? So I think that is now being solved. Air India is one of them, Indigo. I think both of us actually, all the airlines in the country, they have big plans for cargo. Expansion of fleet is happening. There is more capacity coming in. I think that is actually going to play a major role in terms of bridging the gap to help the country to become 10 million tons. To me, apart from exports will definitely happen. It's a large country. We will manufacture for exports very aggressively in the coming years. But transshipment is going to play a major role to bring a significant part of the 10 million tons. So as we bring in capacity as an airline, as the airports actually improve the hub infrastructure, etc., policy change, as I said a few minutes ago, is very much required. With these things falling in place, I personally do not see any reason why we cannot do the 10 million tons, because we have all the right factors that contributed to the growth of cargo in other airports outside the country are now falling in place. I think it's a thing which is gradually, very beautifully falling in place to help us achieve that number. So I'm quite optimistic and positive.
And Vipinji, just to remind you of your own formula, how it will happen. So remember, you've been saying that, if 1% of sea cargo we can shift, we can bring that modal shift. Anyways, this 3.5, will double. So the point is, I think one is, of course, we need to, as an industry, work together to collectively, give solutions to the shipper, where we bring efficiency across the chain. We've been great across our individual silos of operation. If you ask the handlers, they will say they are doing a great job. The airport is doing a great job. Airline is doing a great job. If you ask the shipper, he says, I have no visibility. Life has not changed for me. So I think this is where, the differences, and where, ACFI and, a greater collaboration across the supply chain needs to happen. So that when we compress the processing times, the shipper sees the value and he makes that modal shift. So I think this is where, very rightly said, we need to work more, collectively and collaboratively to achieve.
Just one quick point also, Vipin, is I think cross-border e-commerce sales, that hasn't happened so far. So the size of that market is very, very small. As we kind of understood from various research reports in the country, that is expected to become $25 billion very soon, in about 5 or 6 years' time. Now that is expected to generate about 4 million tons of international cargo, right? In fact, we are saying that both airlines and airports possibly may not have the capacity to manage it. So that is one thing which is actually going to accelerate the growth of air cargo in this country.
Great. So one more last question. I can see the timer in front of me, and any questions?
Pukhrachuk from Group Concord. My question is to Vipul. Very happy to hear about the wide body. Wide body basically works more with the network. So while there has been a wrestle to this by joining hands with Air India or other airlines with networks, it is a very challenging business. What's your plan, and what kind of wide body are you trying to bring into your fleet?
So I think it must have been my lucky day today. I'm getting my answers all in the questions that are being asked. To answer that first, it's the A330 freighter is what we are looking at. And you're absolutely right, Pukhrajji, that as a standalone carrier, we don't have our heads up in La La Land at the moment, that we can make it, to get to operating like a Cargolux, which sits in Europe and kind of spreads its network across so many years. It's managed to get there. We are definitely all about collaboration. We are definitely in talks with different entities about collaboration, both domestically as well as internationally. And there is, to us, it's about, because we are there, I think there are airlines that see an opportunity to work with us in order to, mutually expand the sort of network that they are flying today. So it gives us, again, a lot of confidence today to talk about the fact that we can try and bring a wide-body freighter in 2025. And of course, the business cycle by itself is expected to start to ease up by that point of time. So definitely not alone. Got to work with other people. And so collaboration is a very, very key pillar of Pradhan Air's growth plans in the future.
Good. Thank you for that. And I think that also brings us to the time. But thank you, gentlemen. It's been great speaking to you. I'm sure our audience would have loved the insights that you brought. And there's a lot of takeaways, at least for me personally, and I'm sure the team would have taken things that we can take forward. Thank you so much, and let's give them a big hand.
Thanks, Sanjeev.